My number one movie that shaped my love of watching films in a group is Father of the Bride, 1991. It's interesting I have so many 90s movies.
I
I
mean, we're
typically,
we're children of the '90s. Let's
I
just own
know,
it.
but I
We're
always
old, so
try to bring some diversity from like different times of my life, but this just happens to be what it is. But so yeah, directed by Charles Schreier, written by Nancy Myers, starring Steve Martin, Diane Keaton, Martin Short. Quick log line: with his oldest daughter's wedding approaching, a father finds himself reluctant to let her go. So, like I said upfront, like this movie to me is the representation of kind of that family classic viewing experience of all four of us, my sister, my parents, watching a movie and just totally connecting with it. And in a weird way, and in a very heightened way,
Mhm.
seeing your own home and the characters of your own home being reflected on screen in some form or the other, and the laughter and the tears that brings. This is what this movie is to me. So, but curious if you'd watched it. I'm sure you have, but what's your relationship with this movie?
Yeah, very similar to yours actually. This was like a family movie night. This was on a lot, and that's my main associations with it. I actually haven't seen I've seen it a bunch as a kid and hadn't seen it in probably like 15 or 20 years for
Mm,
this rewatch, but I definitely in rewatching it would just think back to all those nights when just as a family we let's rent Father the Bride from, the video store and watch it as a family. This definitely is a family movie for sure.
yeah. What did you think of it watching it this time?
It was interesting. Like, first of all, it was definitely very dated in the sense of he runs a shoe company where they do
Right.
manufacturing in the United States. I was like, oh yeah, we did used to make things here. This is so odd. Like, what a movie that they could never make nowadays. But I guess again, because I'm older, I started paying more attention to his like Steve Martin's
Right.
character, focusing on him more. I mean, yeah, he's the main character in the movie, but as a kid, I guess I wasn't as he's a middle-aged man. I'm a middle-aged man now. I mean, I don't have kids or my I don't have a daughter who's about to get married, but I was focused a lot more on him. And it was just interesting seeing him being, the classic Steve Martin thing of what he can pull off. Like he's a total self-centered jerk, but you still sort of like connect with him because he's Steve Martin. It's like he can walk that very fine line, similar to
Yeah.
what we were mentioning with Ben Affleck earlier. You can kind of be two things, but you still feel some affection towards him just because he is Steve Martin. And this is definitely a perfect case for his on-screen
Right.
persona. This is exactly that. I will say, like I feel like he was a little more mean than I remembered. And he doesn't really get his comeuppance in the film. And I sort of felt like, well, what did he really learn in this? It was the ending seemed kind of rushed to me this time. Like I didn't think he had some big emotional scene like learning experience with his daughter. His daughter just goes off and now is happily married, going on the honeymoon. And I don't really think he changed much as a person, which I thought I remembered him sort of like learning something, and now I'm like maybe he didn't really learn anything, but that was sort of my
Mm.
experience this time of like kind of questioning like what was the like he was too mean and he didn't really seem to learn his lesson in the end about what really mattered to him, which was his family. But I don't know.
Mm.
How have you seen this often since as a kid? You watched
Yeah.
this a lot?
I would say so, like every few years. And I always centered on him, even watching it as a kid or as a teenager or something, because
Mm-hmm.
I think he has qualities of my dad, of course, in like a very heightened way. Like my
Right,
dad
right.
can be, or I guess all dads can be like, I know best and this is my way or the
Yes.
highway.
Yeah.
And then the kids rebel. But in the end of the day, the parent or the dad was sort of right. And
Yeah.
you realize that you're
Yeah.
actually silly and you don't really know much, but your father loves you and hugs you and sort of goes along with whatever your charade is of the day or the week anyway, right? Like
Right,
that to
right.
me is the whole crux of the movie. Like it's so funny, even though the title is bride, there's bride in the title. To me, it was never about the wedding. Like you can sort of replace the wedding with anything that I want to buy so and so item, or
Mm-hmm.
I want to go on a certain trip, or it could be anything. And I think that's the genius of the writing of the movie, is that it doesn't matter what the plot is. What I just said earlier, that is the crux of it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how the love that you have between parents and children is sort of all bound together. The learning, I think, is on all sides. Like I think she realizes like how she like the daughter is like, oh, I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to marry him because he didn't give me the right gift and what have you.
Right, right,
And
right.
I think in that's a very critical scene because you see both of them learning. Like he Steve Martin gets to see the son-in-law to be for who he is and what a great partner he's going to be. And he
Right.
realizes that I'm an overreactor, so is my daughter. We come from a long lineage of overreactors. And it dawns on him that this guy is actually like Diane Keaton, like somebody who balances him. Like this guy's going to balance my daughter. And that's the learning, I think.
Hmm.
And there's learning for the daughter too, that you can't just be overreacting and being silly about things that don't matter. And I think that to me is the learning. Then after that, yeah, I think the fact that he totally misses out on all the key experiences of his daughter's wedding, there's something there, right? Like he, on one hand, he's holding the whole thing with his own bare hands so that it doesn't fall
Hmm.
apart, the
Right.
parting and
Right.
this and that, but he also misses out the whole thing. And I don't know if I can articulate that feeling in words, but it always rings very emotionally with me that that's the sacrifice that parents make, you know?
Hmm.
And even though he wanted none of this shenanigans, let alone the wedding itself, the fact that he totally surrenders to it, and without him, the wedding wouldn't happen, actually. It'll fall apart in the end, I think.
I think I give Franck a lot more credit than you do. Maybe I think he would
Oh,
have pulled it
no,
off.
I don't think so. It would
I
have been a
trust Franck.
disaster.
Oh, come on.
It would
Don't
have been
diss
a
Franck. He's
disaster.
my favorite character in the movie. Martin Short does an incredible job, but I almost feel like what Steve Martin's character goes to in this is like he's putting him on himself because he can't help but think that he needs to be doing all these things. But in actuality, I don't think he actually does. And he could have just unplugged and everything would have been fine. But because of his neuroses of like, no, no,
There's
no, no,
that too.
dad
But I
knows
think
best,
he,
which is relatable. Like, I'm not saying it's not
yeah,
relatable, but
I
I
think
was
he
hoping
does
that
it
there'd be
because he
some.
cares. And he has that moment before that, okay, these two make sense together. And
Right, right, right.
my daughter's happiness does matter the most. And he wants to do it too. Although I agree he can't help himself
Right.
either.
It's like not what she wants necessarily. I would think she would want her father to attend her wedding instead of make sure everything's perfect. It was like he was doing it more for himself, I felt, than it was
Yeah, he's doing it
for
for
what she
her.
wants.
And I
Right.
think the other learning is that he is not overreacting at the phone call. He's like, have fun,
Oh, right.
go
At
be
the
you.
end.
Like that
Right,
is the
right, right.
learning. And see, that's the thing for a movie that's so heightened and kind of cheesy. I don't think it needs to then underline that, oh, we've learned everything. Like there's no epic monologue at the end between him and his wife. Like it's pretty grounded. And that's what I love about it, I think.
Yeah, that on this watch, that was missing to me. Like I needed that moment of him like getting punished for his like misbehavior, which yeah, he went to jail and obviously some stuff happens to him, but I wanted some sort of punishment and then into resolution in the story that I don't know. I remembered that being there, which is weird. I was like, I remember this movie ending a little bit differently, but again, I never, I think, just focused so much on his character before, which he does play a neurotic dad incredibly well. Like, I think that is
Oh, yeah.
all the performances where he plays like a neurotic dad, which is sort of like his career after this movie because it was such a giant hit. He
So,
just does
so
that.
good.
He does that so well. I just wanted some kind of like comeuppance for him, and then
Yeah.
a moment of like, oh, okay, maybe I should be there because my daughter wants me
I
to be at the
disagree
wedding.
totally. If anything, now that I'm grown up, I'm like, yeah, you are 22. You should not be getting married.
Oh, I don't mean
This is
about that. Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
If
No, that is true. I think he was in the right to be like, well, hold on a second. Like, you just met this guy. Like, I'm more
yeah,
talking about the end of the movie with the wedding scene of, yeah, she wanted him to be there and he wasn't because he was thinking he knew best about fixing everything else and no one else could do it. But
I
Franck could have done
disagree.
it. I
I
trust Franck.
disagree. I
He knew what he
disagree.
was doing.
I disagree.
You gotta love the Martin Short performance, though. I mean, I think this is one of
Oh,
his
it's very
best.
good. Although
Yeah.
the thing with that performance is that once you've seen it a few times, I think it loses its shine to me.
Mm,
Is to me what lives up is everything else. And two quick shout outs to Dan Keaton. Doesn't have much
yeah.
to do in the
She's
movie,
great.
but I think she looks radiant and amazing. And it's in on this watch it dawned on me how critical it is to see that she's actually the center of warmth, calmness,
Hmm.
nurturing, and balance in this house. Like these kids, they don't grow up. The daughter don't doesn't grow up to be accomplished, smart, driven, but also kind and everything, and find a good guy for herself if it's not
Hmm.
for both the parents. And I think that representation is very important. Like just the way the two Dan Keaton and Steve Martin balance each other out
Oh yeah,
as
yeah.
a couple, they do the same thing for the kids and for the entire home as well.
Mhm.
And then the second is Nancy Myers, who, all this looks very easy, but it's very difficult to make something that is sort of cheesy and lighthearted feel effortless.
Mhm.
Create a home and a family setting that is warm and inviting. Like, this is the special effects of this movie. We just
Right.
talked about Terminator and everything. Like, this is the special effects of this movie, which is this beautiful, warm, believable space that you want to be a part of, which is sort of her trademark, her genius. So go Nancy Myers is what
Yeah,
I
I think
would
this is her best
say.
movie for me, at least. It's a
Yeah.
classic. I've never seen the original one. I don't know. Have you ever seen that one, the Spencer
No,
Tracy
the
one?
one from Tracy, no, I
Yeah, yeah,
haven't.
yeah. And there's actually a remake that just came out last year, I think, that I
Mm-hmm.
also have not seen.
Andy
This,
Garcia. Yeah, I didn't
yeah,
see the
did
movie
not see
yet.
that one. But this one still, again, holds up as I think just interesting too. That much like Terminator 2, my experience with this of just the family getting together and watching Father Bride a lot,
Mm,
it just shows the universality of both this movie and Terminator. Of like, we're on opposite ends of the world,
right.
totally different experiences, but the same. We came at these movies in the exact same way: sleepovers and then
Exactly.
family movie nights.
Because family bonds and friendship bonds, they're the same,
Mhm.
actually, no matter where you're at.
Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.